Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Bound by Grace podcast. I'm Amber. Andrea is on, but I wanted to go through a little bit of an introduction for our guest speaker. So, in this soul nurturing conversation, we're diving deep into a topic that sits at the heart of restoration and renewal, healing your inner child. Whether you're navigating the aftermath of trauma, longing to rediscover your sense of worth, or simply seeking deeper emotional clarity, this episode is here to remind you that healing is not only possible, but sacred. Joining us is the gentle yet insightful Dr. Kim, a Christian child psychiatrist whose wisdom is grounded in both clinical expertise and compassionate faith. With years of experience helping children and the child within all of us, Dr. Kim brings biblical principles and psychological depth into a dialogue that's as enlightening as it is tender. Together, we're going to explore what the inner child really means from both therapeutic and spiritual perspectives, how scripture speaks to our childhood wounds and emotional restoration, and practical steps to begin the healing journey with grace at the center. So, whether you're listening on your morning walk, winding down after a long day, or quietly reflecting with your journal in hand, this space is for you. Let's walk toward wholeness. So, with us today, like I stated, is Dr. Kim. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for this space. So my name is Dr. Eugene Kim, and my tagline is I'm a Christian psychiatrist who cares more about what's right with you than what's wrong with you. And the reason why I say that is every time somebody finds out that I'm a psychiatrist in a group circle, everybody stops talking because they're like, oh, she's diagnosing me. Or some people come up to me and say, tell me everything that's wrong with me. But for 10 plus years of my expertise and just talking to people, there's so many things that's going right with us that I just
Mhm.
wanted to emphasize that and really nurture that.
Oh, I really like that. Um, Yeah, I love that. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and how we're going to be speaking on healing your inner child today?
Yeah, and I really like your intro because that is really the essence of what I do. So I have a private practice, a very small private practice in San Antonio. And the reason why I became really passionate about this inner child was when I went through therapy with my traumas and I just read this book called, Dream of You by Joe Saxton. And she did a beautiful exercise of kind of go back to those painful childhood and what is Jesus doing in that room, And for me,
Oh,
that came to me was when I battle with body image and like constantly dieting, right? Just trying to fit in. And I'm relatively, you would say, thick boned, girl. And it was just really hard for me to just lose enough weight. And I would have to go almost like anorexic to be that skinny. Um, and in Korean culture, being skinny is such a ideal that
mhm.
my parents didn't know. I would say didn't know better, but didn't really recognize that it was really unhealthy because the whole culture celebrates, dieting because it's like a practice of discipline, right? So
Yes.
my parents were like, oh my gosh, good job, you're not eating as much, you're exercising all the time, good job. And in that room, that was my painful memory. And I could see Jesus really like cupping my hand, like, don't listen to them, and just like, you're beautiful just the way you are. And I really saw Jesus, and that really started this exercise of what if I led Jesus into this memory, right? And how would he reinterpret this for me? And really doing that practice over and over again, along with my therapist, along with my Bible studies, and just really inviting spirit of Jesus into my life and into my past. That is what this is why I had to create the course called Be Still to Move Forward, is really guiding the people through
Oh,
the course of finding your inner child, because I know that it could be really daunting and scary. And what would I find there? What would
yeah.
God say? And let's just be honest, just like my painful memory, we channel a lot of what we heard in our, childhood, like maybe our parents' voice or elders' voice or the pastor's voice, and we interpreted that. But it's like, let's just kind of protect us from that. But what would Jesus say in that room? So, that's what I'm really passionate about. And I would love to just share, my story and my, little Eugene story and explore that.
Yeah, so I didn't expect to get emotional, but
Mm,
when you said Jesus was cupping your hands over your ears, that was very visual for me. So
mm,
as you can see, I have a lot of past childhood trauma that probably needs to be healed as well, because that was definitely triggering. Um,
yeah.
but but beautiful. I mean, so
Mm,
beautiful. So I'm very happy you're on. I think this is going to resonate with a lot of our listeners, because even though we are starting to get into a society portion of Western culture where we think on mental health, that was not a thing when I was growing up.
mhm.
Um, so it's just now becoming, and it's so important. It's so very important, because everything that happens with your mental health is exuded through your body, it's exuded in your relationships. It's all in how you're reacting, and your perspective with your world around you. It's
Yeah.
all from that, basis of childhood,
Mhm.
and what you experienced. So mental health is very important in my household. So I'm very glad you're on. So where would someone start? I guess is where we should begin, if they would like to explore how to heal their inner child.
The first part that we sometimes find ourselves is like rock in a hard place because we feel like we should perform certain things, right? Like we should be this kind of parent, we should make this amount of money, we should be this kind of wife, our finance portfolio should be this, and you should really find your passion and make it into a job. There's just so many things to do, and when you feel like I'm always behind, there's always things to do and I'm never good enough, that really is a symptom of unmet childhood needs.
Hmm.
Because just like my parents celebrated, anorexia as a form of discipline, there's so many kinks and misinterpretations that we grew up with. And I mean, I think everybody will kind of resonate. It's like if you tried your best and got a B plus, some of the parents would be like, why didn't you get an A? Right.
Hmm.
Or if you're just kind of, you got bullied and then you defended yourself and you got in trouble for a principal's office, your parents would say, why did you hit back? Right. Why did you, maybe they would put some Christian ideology, like, why didn't you turn the other cheek?
Hmm.
Or maybe they have some issues that we don't know about, right? Where our self-worth was so misunderstood and ignored and disregarded, and our narrative and our perspective, that we don't know what to do. And then this thirst for just pat on the self and say good job, this thirst, when it's not met, then you start to super achieve, right? Super perform, super responsible, and be really rigid about that because we're basically getting external validation of like, I'm okay from
Yeah.
something else other than what's coming within. So I think that would be a really good place to say, why am I so driven about this? Why am I so perfectionistic about this, right? Why does it have to be a should, or I have to, or I need to perform this, or I need to take care of this person? Is this healthy? Where is this coming from? I think that space would be a really good place to start.
So I think what you're saying is someone needs to allow themselves the safe space and the time, almost like what you said about be still to move forward. They
Hmm.
need that stillness in their life to be able to reflect and really analyze, their past and where these traits or their thinking pattern came
Yeah.
from.
And ask yourself, do I want to continue this way? And I'll tell you
Mm,
this, like when I say that inner child healing, it took me years, like at least dedicated 7 years. So it's something that we have to actively work on. But you and I know that mental health journey, spiritual journey, it takes time and it's gonna take rest of our lives to kind of figure it out. Um, I had that hyper responsibility, and I brought that in my marriage. I brought that in my parenting. So
mm,
a lot of times, and not to speak, not to go into like my husband had an inner child wound, right? And he had his, baggage. So he's kind of coming in, and it was almost like a perfect storm because I'm taking care of everything. And out of fear of like failure, he's like kind of checked out. He's like,
yep.
oh, she's doing such a great job. If I kind of come in, then I'm gonna mess it all up. And if it'll be like clearly my fault, right? That was kind of his inner child dialogue that he had to overcome. So I'm taking care of everything. I'm making decision everything. I'm getting burnt out. And there's moments where I had like mental breakdowns, like and yelling at everybody, yelling at my kids, out of proportion, yelling at my husband out of proportion. And I remember Holy Spirit said to me, Eugene, I know you're really tired for taking care of everything and taking care of everybody, but did you realize how hard it is to live with an angry wife?
Mm,
Like all the time? Like, and I had to ask myself, like after like fits of anger, I was like, do I want to live this way for the rest of my life? You know, everybody's surviving and thriving because of me, but is this sustainable? And do I want to be yelling at my kids for the rest of my life? Do I want to be this bitter rest of my life? And for me, especially anger and bitterness is pressure, right? Like I'm a pressure cooker. So where is this pressure coming from?
hmm
And how can I release that pressure and put less pressure on me so that I'm not like blowing up all the time? So not only like a check-in and a space, but evaluation of where am I going?
hmm
And those, and I tried it all. Like a lot of times when people are making this decision, whether to start a therapy, they're like, man, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of time, like I don't know if I have that because going back to the problems, like I have to do this, da, 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 and I
hmm
don't know if I can add on top. I always tell them, look at your last 10 years, all your fixes, quick fixes that you did. Can you live next 10 years like that with that amount of pressure, that amount of, I don't know how I'm going to get the next fix of external validation, like that insecurity? Like, do you want to live next 10 years like that?
Yeah.
Or do you want to take some time to be still so that you can really move forward with a different projection, a few degrees over, and that's kind of a way to really evaluate, like where am I going? Where have I been? What have I tried? Did it work? Is it sustainable? Is my life sustainable?
Wow. Would you say that someone that clearly in their mind, in their heart, maybe the Holy Spirit speaking to them, and they
Mm.
think that this would be something that would be beneficial to them, do you think it's something that is necessary to have a, a licensed psychiatrist or counselor or someone to help you navigate this because they have the tools in their toolbox? Or do you think it's something that someone could do on their own without training?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And like every good question, there's an answer. It's like, it depends. So, I've heard stories of therapists that are licensed that is um, not a good fit, right? And a lot of times we
Yeah.
kind of believe their credentials and just kind of go 2 years, 3 years,
hmm
meeting them every week, every 2 weeks. And then it just ends up being a venting session or like a nice person to talk to. And there's not enough grounds that's being covered, right?
Yes. Yes.
Um, versus, so I'll tell you like what is a bad fit And then I'll
Hmm.
kind of tell you like what to consider. And
Okay.
then I've heard stories of Christian counselors who are like, you're like venting and you're like just getting the steam off. And they're like, well, did you know that, there's no reason to be anxious because he's taking care of the sparrows, and just like throwing verses at you. Right. And then you're like, okay, like I don't feel safe to really explore this. Right. So
Hmm.
there's over correcting like when it comes to Christian counseling or some kind of Christian therapist who's just using the scriptures and spiritual sounding stuff that really doesn't create a sacred space, right? So stay away from that. Now, I would say there's therapists and coaches or courses that are great. I think what matters the most is the thirst for change, like within yourself. Like, I can't live another year, day, week like this, right? I need to figure this out because there's plenty of great books that I have. I have a PDF of the books that I read, that really helped me to really hone this in. I have an online course that doesn't come with a coaching. So the material is going to really saturate with the fertile soil, and fertile soil is your readiness to change things, right?
Hmm.
Really introspectively evaluate, where am I going? Where's my family going? Where's my marriage going because of this? So that is the most important thing. And people, courses, books will come and go and they'll do their job. But I feel like if you really wanted to maximize and you have the financial mean and you have the time means to do that, I think like a coach or a therapist that really will challenge you to cover grounds and
Hmm.
actually do a diagnosis, not like a DSM-5, like, MDD or
Right.
GAD
Right.
diagnosis, but really go in there with the inner child space and be like, oh, that was what happened. And here are some options. Let's reframe that. Let's practice that and keep you accountable to really work on yourself. Um, so that really depends on you. If you're like, this is something completely new to me, right? Like, I don't know where to start. I don't know what will come. Then I think starting off with the person to keep you accountable and just, be accompany you in this in the beginning would be great.
Yeah, I think that for me in particular, what it would do, it's not that I can't think of these things on my own and get, to the source. I'm sure that I could if I gave myself that space. But I think that having someone that's trained and knows the navigating steps after we get to the basis of what's going
Yeah.
on, it's almost like they're more organized than my thought
Mhm.
pattern would be. So it
Yeah.
really would take me on the correct path and a straight path, not one where
Mhm.
I'm like, I'm thinking of something and I'm going back and forth and very disorganized thought pattern. Um,
Yeah.
so I can see where this would be very helpful. Um, how does someone seek out the proper licensing, I guess, in healing their inner child? Like, what is the best person to go to licensing wise? And then I guess they'll have to feel them out on how they actually, do their therapy. But
Yeah, the nature of kind of being a mental health provider, we take great interest in the past because the past shaped what we think about ourselves and about the world. When when it comes to proper therapy techniques and, like, oh, I'm like, interfamily, therapy or something like that, I say the alphabet soups in the therapy world, like, will get lost. And there's always new therapy techniques that's coming up. Um, the first criteria is somebody who your personality matches, right?
mhm,
I tend to be, even though I'm a Christian child psychiatrist, my style might not be the best because my style tends to be more logical, analytical, warm, but also direct, right? Like I kind of
mhm,
think of it as methodically. It might not be the best fit for somebody who just needs extra tender, extra, you know, nurturing space, right? So whoever you connect with, I think that's the first criteria. The second criteria would be somebody who takes great interest in taking inventory of your childhood.
Mm,
I think within psychiatry and therapy too, there's different types of therapy. There's one that's kind of like, take a snapshot of what's going on right now. Let's reframe that so that we can move forward. Just like strictly like cognitive behavioral therapy. That's really good when everything is going haywire and you just need to get a sense of like what's going on right here, right now, right? But inner child work is a lot in the past. So it could be more trauma informed therapy, right? Or there's now inner child healing therapy.
mm,
So whoever you can connect better with and you feel safe with to explore, but at the same time, who takes great attention and care to your past, that would be a really good place to start. Because when we say inner child healing, I think any healing is inner child healing. Because essentially, we're giving that child attention and care that we didn't get.
mhm.
So, by you saying, hey, this is important, I'm going to try to meet you and listen to you, I think that really heals your inner child. So, any effort that's spent to bring the attention and care back to you, I think it will heal the inner child. So, it doesn't have to be specific therapy or specific person or specific credentials, is whoever is paying attention to you and what happened to you.
Yeah, I think it needs to be very specified because, and this is just my opinion, it may not be factual, and it is my experience. I
Mm,
have seen, so I've been medicated for many, many years for anxiety, depression, PTSD, and I struggle, not struggle, but I also have autism, high masking. And I went to regular counselors. I've never seen a psychiatrist,
mm-hmm,
um, but I went to regular counselors that my insurance would handle. And so I tried, I've tried probably in the past 5, 6 years that I actually was like, okay, I'm just medicating and covering up the issue. Let's actually try and dive in and heal some stuff. So I started trying to seek out counseling. Um, I've probably tried about 10 to 15 different counselors, and I only went once to each of them
mm,
because the way it started, I hate small talk. I can't, it makes me uncomfortable. I have to script in my head what I'm going to say or how I should respond. Like it really gets under my skin or
mm,
it makes me anxious.
mm-hmm,
Um, but they would do small talk and I'm there thinking, okay, we're going to dive in. Like this is going to get good. And they just ask me about my day. And the
mm,
one therapist that I did just dive in, because I explained what I am to you now, she was like, well, let's do it. Let's just dive in. I was excited. So I
mm-hmm,
dove in. She cried.
mm.
And that made me uncomfortable. So I haven't had the best experience in trying to find someone that's a really good fit. So now the VA said that EMDR might be a good fit for me.
I see. Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so that's the next step. They said it might take 2 to 3 months. I've already done my intake to get me actually in, but that'll be the next step for me. Um,
Yeah. No, you mentioned a good point. Is so there's a few different things to consider, like when you're finding a therapist, and also maybe medication versus therapy, right? So
mhm,
how I like to view it as, when you're involving in therapy, you're gonna be basically, we all have like a hoarder house and it's really messy and we're just like really overwhelmed, right? And therapy is getting somebody to enter into the hoarder's house and just like really inspect like the closet or the kitchen or the bedroom. And we're really trying to dissect and really clean out each room by room. Now, there could be underlying condition, kind of like the one that you mentioned, that will make that experience into excruciating, painful experience. And when that gets in the way, then there's no reason for to do therapy at that state of, heightened anxiety and stress, right? Because that will just make everybody just not do therapy ever again, because it's just like excruciating, painful experience. So, what depending on the severity of that, we usually recommend, okay, let's try the medications first so that your stress response lowers a little bit, to give you that courage to enter into that space with a therapist. So,
Mhm.
really depending on the severity is, sometimes it could be therapy first, and then we kind of find out, oh, I think we could benefit from medications, or medication first, so that you can really make traction with the therapy. Does that kind of make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you really want to be with a psychiatrist who takes good care and attention to your childhood, because really, if you take a snapshot of what's going on right now, just right now, it doesn't make sense, and it will qualify for like 4 or 5 diagnoses. But I think I have the benefit and appreciation of childhood events, because I have to pay attention to what happened in the childhood and what that inner child went through to really get to the diagnosis. For example, there's so many people coming to me, I think I have ADHD. And some of
Hmm.
them might really have ADHD. But ADHD could be like, lack of concentration could be a symptom of anxiety, symptom of PTSD, and also symptom of depression. So for me to go back to the past and say, did you have ADHD symptoms when you're in elementary school, middle school, high school, college? How did it evolve over time? You really want to understand that, so that you're really diagnosing ADHD for what it is.
Hmm.
So getting a really good psychiatric evaluation will definitely help to set you on the right path. And you're right, the EMDR and trauma focused CBT is trauma specific therapy that really evolves into reading and rereading the traumatic events in your life, to a time that, in the beginning, there could be a really surge of trauma response, like the emotional fight or flight or freeze response. But over time, with the helpful and nurturing, guide, then your response kind of decreases. And what I've heard analogy of my patients going through EMDR was, it's like there's like a room full of library and open books all around, and I'm reading the books one by one, really understanding it and summarizing it and folding that book and putting on a shelf. So it's like you're organizing a library with all the memory. So that's how I
Oh.
understand EMDR. And it does get worse before it gets better. I mean, if you imagine, like cleaning and reading all those books and like organizing them. Um, but it's totally worth it, I think. Um, so that being said, I think medication or non-medication, what type of therapy, that really depends on the state that we're in before we enter into each of our hoarder house, if you will.
Mm. Yeah. I agree with that. Medication for me makes it where I am able to function during the day. Um, I had a stillbirth at 35 weeks, and if I am not medicated, which I've tried several times, because when you're on the medication, you feel fine, so you're like,
Mhm.
I think I'm okay, and you start to wean yourself off, and it
Yeah.
turns out you're not okay. But when I'm off the medication, I have many, many nightmares. Um, Little things trigger me, even though it was years ago. It was such a
Mm.
traumatic and such an emotional inducing event that um, it just, it's something I need to work through properly. And I can't do this on my own. So I know
Yeah.
EMDR, I'm hoping EMDR will be very helpful. And I'm a little nervous because I have heard that it's really taking a look and walking through that trauma. Um, and that I know is going to be very emotional, not easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But getting past it, or not past it, but being able to no longer have it jump forward in my mind as a reaction, um,
Exactly.
would be lovely.
It is a very doing therapy and inner child work is basically taking a proactive stance to your issues and what happened to you versus reactive stance when things just pop out at you, you know? So
Mhm.
it's just like budgeting, you know, like when life happens and if you don't have the emergency fund and you don't know where the money and coming and going, everything is a reaction, right? Like, oh my gosh, I had to take out loans to pay off the car or something like that, right? Accidents. But think of therapy as taking the budget, you know, of what's coming and what's going. How am I reacting? How am I, you know, what am I saying? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? Is really assessing your mental budget, if you will, or emotional budget, so that you're no longer reacting. You're now proactively understanding, oh, you know, I was reacting to my husband when he said this because of
Mhm.
that. And let's
Mhm.
allocate some funds to that and really allocate some emotional funds to this so that you're now reacting appropriately, not inappropriately.
Yes. Yeah. And that takes self-awareness. Not
Oh,
everyone's very
absolutely.
self-aware.
Oh yeah, and boldness. I mean, you we see so many like finance budgeting YouTube videos of like people who are like, "Oh, I had no idea that I was spending so much on subscriptions," you know? And isn't that so true to us, right? Like we are living such a triggered life and we're like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea that that was my trigger because of this." And once you
Mhm.
recognize that, you're like, let me work on this so that I'm no longer reacting to this, you know?
Yes.
That's kind of like what we're doing when we're doing therapy.
Yeah, I think for our listeners, and correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, that's totally fine. I'd rather you correct it. But for me, a lot of listeners, a lot of people in general,
Mm,
when they're triggered, they blame the person that triggered them instead of self assessing and saying, it's not you. It's actually me. It's a trauma that I didn't deal with, and I need to evaluate that and maybe put a boundary up for if it's something that you shouldn't cross. Um, but like I had an experience with my husband, and I said this on another episode because it's just a really good example. He had said something to me and it made me react. And
mhm,
then I thought to myself, what am I doing? What he said was actually nothing bad, but I reacted as if he did something wrong. And then I thought to myself, this is from past trauma from a relationship previously. So it's almost like I'm punishing him for something he didn't even do.
mm,
Um, so I apologized to him and I said, actually, this is how I'm feeling. And whether you meant it or not, this is the way it made me feel. And this is
mhm.
why. So that fight that could have gotten a lot worse turned into a conversation instead.
Yeah, I love that example. Um, there's few things to consider is so whenever I get mad or react, I can think of myself as like a measuring cup, you know, and I tell this to my kids is that if I'm thinking about work and something's not going about work and I'm getting triggered by something, you know, from my past or my husband is not picking up like keeping the promise that he made, like it's like a cup, right? And everything adds to my cup. And then let's say that my oldest forgot to lift up the toilet seat, you know, for the seventh hundredth time that I told him to do that. And then I had to, you know, talk to him about it. Like that's gonna add, you know, another, you know, amount to the my measuring cup. And let's say that in that moment I react because all my cup is like overflowing. This is what now I how I talk to my kids is that hey, how mom reacted to you is not all you. I have I'm dealing with this. I don't list it so that I'm like using my kids as a therapist, but it's like there's a lot of things going on that added to my cups, and I'm sorry that it spilled over to you. And let me just kind of say sorry. But I would say him not doing, let's say, lifting the toilet seat up it was not completely innocent or nothing, right? Like it's
Hmm.
something that we're working on. So it's like,
Yes.
let's appropriately address this because this is also going on for a while. So, um, in a way, when we have our capacity and is overflowing our capacity, we can allocate, okay, this was because of this and this was because of that. And let me just, you know, allocate appropriate response to all of them so that not that one person who, tipped it over is getting all of it.
Hmm. Yeah. That's a good example. I think that that would help me with my kids, explaining to them, hey, mommy did not mean that, and this is what
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think I'm
Um,
sorry and I love you and thank you
yeah,
goes a really long way when it
it
comes
does.
to readjusting expectations and just like, okay, I shouldn't have, because essentially we're setting boundaries for our kids, right? So it's like when I'm yelling and I don't say sorry, they don't know that boundaries were crossed for them.
Hmm.
So it's like
Hmm.
me going back and saying, you know what, that boundary that I crossed was right here. And I'm sorry that I crossed that. So I think it's like a really good, messy, but really good legacy to say sorry and thank you and I love you to our kids whenever we do mess up, and we will mess up plenty of times.
I am really big on you apologize to your children if you mess up, because
Hmm.
otherwise they may put you on a pedestal where you don't belong, because you're human. You're going to mess up. And then the moment that they grow up and they see that, it can shift a lot of their views, um, and possibly have a little bit of, um, like, not dislike towards you, but what's the word I'm looking for? Like a little bit of resentment towards you for not showing them, hey, I'm human too.
Yeah.
Um, for me, when I was growing up, not to throw my parents under the bus, they may have apologized. It's just not in my memory bank.
Hmm.
But it wasn't something that I remember them doing. And there were moments that boundaries may have been crossed because they were overspilling their cup,
Hmm.
in that moment. And there was no apology. It was just, you're in the wrong, deal
Hmm.
with the consequence, and we're going to move forward. And they
Hmm.
were pretty big on, you don't apologize to kids, like, but now they've grown as well. So when
Hmm.
they hear that I've apologized to my child, they're like, good. um,
Yeah.
but I don't apologize to my child in the middle of uh, disciplining. Like, I try to get through the disciplining, and if I know I messed up, I wait for things to calm down, and then I'll walk in and then I'll discuss it with them and state, mommy should not have reacted that way. I should never raise my voice in that way. You don't deserve that. It doesn't mean that you didn't do something wrong. It means mommy reacted badly to it. Um, so that's, at least that's how I deal with my kids, because I am human and I need them to know how to apologize. It's so important in relationships. You don't need to grow up thinking you're always right. That's going to make for a monster when you get grown.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And like how many of us have been raised with like do as I say, not as I do, right?
yes.
And um I was definitely a generation who got that, and I try my best to not do that, and really give them the idea that you can say things, you can feel things, and you can do things, and we're all troubleshooting essentially in this microcosm of family, and we'll hurt each other, but we'll apologize to each other to learn to respect space and
Mhm.
preferences. I think though that one of the area that I had to learn was that, so we have this, let's say, little t trauma from our parents, and we have this idea, I'm never going to do that, or like I'm going to do opposite of what my parents said, right? And and what happened to me was I had this idea as what I need to do and not do as a parent for my
Mhm.
next kids, but that created not release of pressure, but like more pressure.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you do that. It's like when we got hurt by our parents, we just have this looming fear that I'm gonna be my parent, and that adds more pressure than actually freedom. And I think kind of going back to what does healing inner child look like is that when your inner child is healed, there's no longer pressure to be this or that, in this direction or that choice over this choice. It just really becomes not a list of do's and don'ts when it comes to parenting, working, work life balance, all these things that we're trying to perfect. It just really becomes a state of um, being me. And I'm parenting the way that I am because now I respect me. I know who I am. I know what I like, what I don't like, what I'm good at, what I'm not good at. And it's such a freedom because birthday parties, do I do this, do I do that? No, like what kind of parenting style or preferences or priorities do I have to really celebrate my kid's birthday? Like
Mhm.
how do I want to do that? So
Mhm.
it really frees you from all these expectations or pressure, to perform and just be. And I think I didn't know what boundaries were. Read the book by Henry Cloud, Boundaries, and I was like, and doing this, and I'm like, okay, that kind of makes sense. But really, I've defined boundaries as a promise to be present and protective of my inner child at all cost. So, you kind of mentioned like, okay, like now I was triggered by this and this is my trigger and we'll hash it out. I'm not saying you did, but some
Yeah.
therapists say, "Oh, that's your trigger, then avoid it at all cost." Right? Or get away from it as much as possible. So, if you're triggered by this work, then leave your work and get another job, right? Like it's more of a avoidance, like avoid all
Mhm.
the triggers. But for me, I'm like that's not healthy in any way. So, when I'm entering into a potentially triggering situation, the triggers will always be there and there will be a lot of triggers in life. But what I'm working on is, am I connected with my inner child, little Eugene, that I know how she feels, what she's thinking about, you know, so that we can increase the tolerance of stress and triggering events so that that little Eugene, no matter where she goes, she knows that she'll be protected and supported by me and that we're going into that space together.
Yeah, and I think it's important for anyone listening that you give yourself grace. You have to think of it, this is your first time living this life. This is your
Yeah.
first time being, as for myself, it's my first time being 38, raising a child named
Yeah.
Kylie that's 14 and a half.
Yep.
Like, I can't say it's my first time raising a child that's 12 because my oldest has been 12, but they are
Mm.
so different. So I
Hmm.
say it's my first time raising a Kylie at 14 and a half.
Yeah.
Um, like, so please just give me grace. We're both doing this together for the first
Hmm.
time, and we're trying it to do it our best. Um,
And trying to do something that was never modeled for us
yes, absolutely.
and learning as we go and
Yeah.
introspecting as we go. And we're going to mess up. But like I tell everybody, it's like there's no such thing as failure, it's just data.
Hmm.
Like you do this way, and then you're like, oh, I didn't like how that turned out. Well, let's tweak it. And a lot of times, what I tell people is, it's not just like a night and day difference. Like, it's not like you have to do positive parenting and now you have to do resilient parenting. Like, it's not like you're throwing everything in the air. It's really tweaks. Like,
Hmm.
what you're doing, probably 80% of them is great, but we're just tweaking the 20%. And what I also tell people is that you're probably doing better than what it feels like for you right now,
Hmm.
and have that perspective. Because, and I think that's the beauty of being a child psychiatrist, is that good and bad is that I hear probably when it comes to bell curve, like outliers of the stories, right? Like the severe trauma or severe parenting or like
Hmm.
parents who are trying to be like the perfect parents and stressing out everybody, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
I think I kind of hear the wide array of parenting stories and childhood stories, and where most of us are probably somewhere in the middle, and we're just kind of floating along together.
yeah. So I know, I believe you're a speaker as well.
Yes.
Is that accurate?
Hmm.
Now, do you only do psychiatry for children, or do you take on adults who want to heal their inner child?
I see age from 4 to 64, and I have a lot of great stories because I think you nailed it in the intro, is that inner child in all of us. And there's a verse where Jesus says, like, if any of you guys make this children stumble, then it's better to basically go die, right?
Hmm.
And not to condone suicide or anything. That's how serious Jesus was about children and protecting childhood. And for me, what I'm realizing is that it's not just literal children, but it's the inner child in all of us that God really wants to protect and make sure that that is a sacred, space, like a spiritual space that we experience sense of worth, sense of protection, sense of attention and nurture. So
Hmm.
I'm really big on that. And there's this one patient, she's 62, and she said, Dr. Kim, why are you paying so much attention to me? I'm 62. I'm about, I'm closer to death than you should maybe take this spot and give it to a child, who will benefit
Mm.
better with your care. And I thought about that and I said, you know what? Maybe numerically it will make sense. But I think what's also powerful is that when you are at 62 and your inner child is healed and your kids and your grandkids see how free you are, that's a testimony worth working for.
Hmm.
So it's not just the potential of growth of a young child, but actually your inner child living last few decades of your life completely free,
Yeah.
and the beauty that she's supposed to be. And I think that's a testimony worth telling too.
Hmm. I think that that is beautiful. I think it would definitely be a testimony to her family, not to mention the way she may react to them or treat them. You know what I mean? It could heal something in
Yeah,
them at the same
yeah,
time. Um,
absolutely.
so if someone wanted to seek you out for possible therapy in regards to this or something else,
Yeah.
um, what is the best way to contact you? And do you take anyone in the United States?
So when it comes to psychiatry and therapy, I can only take somebody from Texas. So you can go to my website, Restore Psychiatry MD PLLC, or restoresite.com. Now, because I'm really passionate about this and I think this should be a universal healing process, I made an online course that is available internationally. And you can find it at eugenekim.com/be still. And you can get the
Oh,
online course. If you're interested in my webinar, uh, I'll give it to you the link, and it's a free webinar kind of introducing what the course is about, and it's eugenekim.com/be still together. And there I'll kind of explain my RPC method, reflect, protect, and connect method that will really guide you in this experiential journey. And I have coaching available internationally as well.
very good. Um, yeah, I think that's wonderful. I'll put the links for our listeners in the description of every way to contact or to get a hold of these webinars or the it's a training guide.
Yeah, it's like a webinar that will kind of teach you like a very simple mental health, like mental swaps. So how do you reflect, like how do you protect your inner child? How do you connect with your inner child? And what does that look like? So
Oh,
what we
okay.
discuss is here, I'll really flesh it out in the webinar, and I'll introduce the online course. An online course goes into using a little bit of cognitive behavioral therapy to really identify what you believe about yourself. And there's an inner child exploration module where we're going back to childhood memories, just kind of like what I did with that, my memory of like, Jesus entering, my painful memories. And I'll teach you that there. And then the third module, which I'm really excited about, is moving forward with your inner child. So how to parent your inner child so that the emotional resiliency and tolerance for stress will increase, and we can, what we say is solution party. So it's like, what kind of solutions will work best for this situation and this situation. So that's
Oh,
really
that's
exciting and fun
fantastic.
part. Hmm.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing it myself.
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
hope you can join us.
yeah, yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the listeners before we close out?
I think the fact that the listeners came this far into our episode and is getting intrigued, I'm really proud of you. And I think, kind of going back to like saying I care about what's more right with you than wrong with you,
Hmm.
is that I offer these, helps not because you didn't try your best, but because you tried your best. And it's just whenever you try your best, like whenever you try your 200%, and let's say that you have another mental breakdown like I did many, many times, it doesn't mean that I needed to do more than I did. It's
Hmm.
actually I needed to do less to
Yes,
make it
yes.
sustainable. So let's give that space and energy back to me so that I can be a sustainable testimony and true testimony of what freedom can be. And I just want to encourage the listeners that you tried your best and I know it. And this course is here not because you needed to do another thing, but I think you needed more love and grace than you
Hmm.
thought.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that. I think people don't really realize they're so hard on themselves.
Hmm.
They forget or they don't think about when you don't reach those goals and you feel exhausted. It's not that you didn't do enough. It's that
Hmm.
you need to do less,
Hmm.
and maybe take it in more bite-sized steps.
Yeah,
So that's
absolutely.
that's really good, to let our listeners know. So I really appreciate you being on. If you'll stay after the outro, to discuss a little bit about how this went, I'd love to talk with you a little bit more if you have time.
Yeah, I
And
have some time.
hopefully Andrea can be on. I see that she's still muted, but for our listeners, I really appreciate you guys. I really hope that this resonated with you and that you gave yourself a little grace after hearing these
Mhm.
things, because you're not alone. Even though your experiences were different than someone next to you, there is hope. Um, it's just going to take a little bit of work from you, and you're not broken. This is something that you can move on from, that you can heal from, and then you can be a great testimony to others. So thank you so much, Dr. Kim, and
Yes, thank
thank
you.
you to our listeners, and you guys have a wonderful day.